My great honor. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce our opening speaker, the distinguished Professor Simone Gozzano. Simone is full professor in metaphysics and philosophy of mind at the Department of Humanities in the University of L'Aquila in Italy, where he was also dean of the department. And some biographical sketch. Simone studied philosophy in Italy and the United States, in particular at the Center for Cognitive Studies at Tufts with Daniel Dennett, and then at Rutgers with Jerry Fodor. And during his career, he also was visiting professor at Durham in Great Britain and at Liège. So it's impossible to mention Simone's every single accomplishment and publication in philosophy of mind, because there are a lot. Let me just mention, for example, 3 national grants received as standing grants from Italian Minister of Research in 2004, 2006, and 2008 for 2 important projects about mind and normativity, and the last one about as a principal investigator in metaphysics. Simone's research has focused on intentionality and consciousness in particular. And let me mention just 3 important books, actually as must read for all Italian students, for me, when I student in Rome, about intentionality: Storia e teoria dell'intenzionalità, History and Theories of Intentionality, Intenzionalità, contenuto e comportamento, Intentionality, content and behavior, and 2 other books about the art problem of consciousness: Pensieri materiali, Material Thoughts, 2007, and Consciousness, Coscienza, 2008. And last but not least, a very important book, co-edited with Chris Hill, published by Cambridge University Press, New Perspectives on Type Identity, about reductionism in philosophy of mind. So it's such an honor for us to have you, Simone, today between us. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming or appearing on video and sharing with us your thoughts about the annual topic, the second person. The title of Simone's talk today is You Are Here, Pain and Its Location. So I will now give the floor to my colleague and friend, Simone Gozzano, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you all for this very nice invitation, for having me here today. Yeah, obviously, I regret much more than you not being there, because after all, most of you are there in Brazil, while I'm here with cold and a rainy day in Italy. So that's too bad, too pity. But nevertheless, now I share my screen. I hope you can see it, because I thought either you're seeing my screen and also your own faces, right? Or yours, okay. So perhaps I should reduce this as an icon, something like that, okay. So then you can see much more here. And I will leave the next slide on the side as a ruler, so I know where I'm going. Good. Yeah, the title of the talk is You're Here, because I think I would like to use, that's the plan, I would like to use Davidson concept of triangulation and the second person on which this notion of triangulation is based, to, not to say to solve, but to tackle, to face, to block an argument against the so-called representational theories of pain, with respect to the problem of pain location. Pain location is such a conundrum, and has raised a number of theories have been raised in Marshall to tackle this problem. And we'll see 2 of them, the main theories that are that have been developed to face the problem of pain location. Then I will present Davidson's view on the concept of triangulation, the concept of the second person. And my aim, my idea is to use the framework provided by Davidson as a tool to have a better understanding of the problem of pain location and to save one theory that I prefer with respect to another one. And I think that Davidson also gives us ideas on why it's better to prefer the representationalist theory over the experientialist one, as we will see. And so I will apply the idea of Davidson framework by means of a metaphor, the metaphor of you're here, and see what happens when we apply this metaphor to the problem of pain location. In a very effective title, actually, of a paper, Murat Aydede has devised very clearly what is the problem of pain location, because it says it's pain, the perception of something, or is rather our introspection. Because the first disjunct, pain being the perception of something, introduces the so-called representationalist or perceptualist theory of pain. According to this kind of theory, pain is basically a form of perception. It's a proprioception or a perception about its own body, our own body. And so when we report something like I feel pain in my toe when I stump my toe on the block or on a concrete block, it's basically, this is a form of perception report. As I say, I see a red apple there. And as in the case of and we will see that basically the truth condition for a report of this case are more or less, according to this theory, the same as the truth condition for the perceptual report. So when I say, if I feel pain in my toe, there is, as Aydede himself described the theory, and I quote, a subjective experience that non-conceptually or in analog format, I skip the problem of the format of the representation, represent his toe as having a physical disorder of the appropriate kind in it. This experience is veridical if John's toe has indeed such a disorder and is relevantly caused by the disorder, and is not veridical otherwise. So if John's pain in his toe is caused by a nerve compression in his lower back or in the spine or whatever, then John's subjective experience is inaccurate and non-veridical. Basically, so what we're going to call the perceptual, or in particular the representational theory of pain, wants that we form some sort of representation of our own body. And when we feel pain in some part of our own body, then what we feel is to be considered as the object of our representation. David Bain, which is more or less the more radical supporter of the representational theory, says that when we perceive a pain, we somatosensorily perceive a body part from within, from inside in a way, and we perceive it as having a property, which is usually a disturbance or a disorder. So the location of pain is part of the representation itself. And here I quote, "The difference between the subject having a pain in one location and another partially consists in, or alternatively constitutes, a difference in the phenomenal kind of the experience that the subject undergoes between the two cases." So basically, when you have a pain in a toe or a pain in a hand, you have a different phenomenal experience whose content is determined by the cause. So the representation of this experience is endowed with a trace of the cause of the experience itself. If different location, we said, we're going to have different experiences. But this, in a way, is a problem, because the contrapositive of this entailment is if we have the same experience, then we're going to have the same location. But this raises a problem with so-called phantom cases. That is, cases in which a subject has undergone some surgical operation or the limb has been removed. In those cases, people seem to feel pain where no physical part is. And so it seems that this constitutes a problem. Well, the quote by Armstrong should have been earlier, because Armstrong again was stressing that sensations are not in the hand, are in the brain. So the location of pain must be an intentional location. But as we see, if we accept the entailment from the different location entail different experiences, then we got the problem that we will have to face. The opposite view is the one that is now defended mainly by Murat Aydede, and who has built a theory on top of that, but has its root in Saul Kripke kind of argument and Chalmers thereof on the concept of pain. We'll see. Basically, Aydede thinks that when we feel pain, we are engaging in a form of introspection, because what really is a pain is a sort of experience. And I quote here, there is a pain quale, when somebody has a pain, instantiated the experience, which presents John's toe to John in a certain way. This is the way John's toe appears to John without making any claim on the condition of his toe. John may come to believe or judge that something is physically wrong with his toe as expected. But this is not a proper perceptual judgment directly based on pain experience. It's inferential, but usually quite habitual. So basically, what Aydede is saying is that we should not be surprised that people that feel pain in the toe look for their toes. But the fact is that they are just accustomed to do that. This is just an inference. Because what happens is that they feel they have an experience, and the experience is endowed with some sort of location tracing. But if they do not have the toe, the experience is just the same. So the physical condition of the body is basically irrelevant for the experience as it is. So pain report express what's happening to the people, to the person, to the consciousness in the person, not to the body of the person. And it seems that in this sense, experientialism is in a better position with respect to do representationalism when phantom cases are under consideration, because the representationalist has to have some sort of double theory, one for the so-called normal pain or physical pain, the other for the phantom pain. He has to create a different theory, while experientialism says, and well, no, the theory is just the same, because what matters is how people feel, and what they feel is irrelevant with respect to the condition of the body, which can be the cause, is usually the cause, but is not necessarily the cause. Christopher Hill has pinned down the difference in logical terms. He said that if we consider representationalists, they take the location to be a de-re location. That is, they take the location to be somewhere in the world. And so that's the intentional character that Armstrong was mentioning. When we feel pain, we have a representation whose reference is there, out there in the world. While for the experientialist, this location is sort of the dictal location, that is just conceptual, is just in the, so to say, the semantics of the representation, but is not necessarily in the world. This, the intuition with which Hill described the situation, which is an intuition that in some sense stresses that when the two theories are considered and contrasted, they basically talk past each other. They are not really referring to the same object in a way. Aidede has developed what he calls the initial argument against representationalism. And it goes like this. When we have a veridical perceptual report, that is the form, you know, I see an apple, a glass here. I don't know if you can see me, but anyway. When I say something like that, I see a glass here, and the report is veridical, then we can do this so-called existential exportation in basic logic. That is, we can say there is an X such that X is a glass, and I see the glass, or I see X better. So we can derive, we can quantify over a variable and then binding the variable with the object that we are perceiving. But when we consider a veridical pain report, this is not the case, because I cannot say I feel pain in my toe, then there is an X such that X is my toe and I feel pain in X, because I can feel that can be true. It can be true that I feel pain in my toe, even if the toe has been removed. So the concept of pain, says Aidede, apply only to express or specify the representational content of pain, but as an experience, not a representation per se. So that's the general milieu, the general setting in which we are with these two theories. Let's now move our attention toward what empirical sciences tell us somehow, obviously. But it is interesting to consider what the International Association for the Study of Pain, IASP, defines pain. This definition is the second one that the IASP has provided a definition back in 1986, and then it has revised it now in the 2020, last year, 2020. And a number of philosophers, I mean, Aidede himself, were involved in the attempt to provide a definition. And here it is: unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with, or resembling that associated with, actual or potential tissue damage. And then it has a second side note: through their life experiences, individuals learn the concept of pain. Now, it's quite interesting that this association also considered the potential tissue damage. There are bunches of experiments in which, if you threat a person of hitting him with a hammer on the toe, they start already to feel some pain, even if nothing has happened yet. Or this happens very frequently with needles. Nowadays we get the shots, the vaccine. Every people has undergone this kind of experience. But the idea is fundamentally that the IASP recognized that pain can occur even without or in absence of any damage. What are so the difficult cases that IASP has considered for setting the definition? There are three. One, we already saw it, but let's start in order. One is called the referred pain. And we say the pain is referred when it's felt at a site that is remote from the site of the origin or stimulation. This is the case, for instance, when the case, but chronic pain in the back, when you got a heart attack, you feel pain in the left arm. I mean, hopefully nobody has got one, but we have been told that people that have a heart attack feel pain in the left arm, and there's nothing wrong in the left arm. Or we know that most of back pains are pains without a cause. No more, there's no more cause, but they still feel pain in the back, and people still feel pain in the back, and this is called the referred pain. A pain is chronic when an acute original acute event whose immediate cause, then subsequently removed, continues to distress the subject. That's typical chronic pain. Back pain is a form of chronic pain, obviously. And then we have the phantom limb pain, which is, according to some classification, a variety of chronic pain. And of course, as we said, when people that have undergone some surgical operation still feel pain in the original location where they used to feel the pain. And per the initial argument by AJ, you can see that all these cases are problematic for representationalism, because there is nothing apparently wrong in the location where our representation, intentionally indicate. And so we gotta have a different kind of, of explanation, while these are not important for these do not affect the experientialist theory, because for the experientialist theory, is just what matters is what the people feel, and that's it. Now, let me start by now seeing what triangulation, what the second person has to do with this. What emerges is that according to perceptualists, perceptual report and pain reports have different truth conditions, because the perceptual reports have different truth conditions because the truth conditions are there in the world and the state of affair to which the person refers when he makes a statement about the world. You know, I see a glass there, so I'm making reference to the glass which is over there, or something like that. While when saying I feel pain, I'm making a reference to my own condition. So it seems that experientialism poses a sort of divide between the first and the second person, because when I see a glass there, then you can see a glass there, but it seems that you cannot see my pain in some interesting, important sense. Clearly, no one can see my pain, or no one can feel my pain better. But it seems that the divide the experientialism is posing is stronger, because basically, according to the experientialism, pain reports do not belong to the realm of the perceptual. So they are intrinsically endowed with a first-person perspective only. So there is no possibility for a second-person perspective. However, as the ISP itself was stressing, we learn concept of pain through experiences. And so how can we make sense of this conceptual learning? How is it possible to learning the concept of pain if everything is completely inside one's own experience? Davidson, as we all know, uses the notion of triangulation to try to give a sense of the fixation of meanings and belief. According to Davidson, the triangulation is, and I quote, "It is the result of a threefold interaction, an interaction which is twofold from the point of view of each of the two agents. Each is interacting simultaneously with the world and with the other agent. To put this in a slightly different way, each creature learns to correlate the reactions of other creatures with changes or objects in the world to which it also reacts." Sorry, people coming. So basically, for instance, when we see the glass table, we are both having a causal relation with the glass which is over the table. So we see the glass over the table, and we also are having some what Davidson calls reason relation between the two of us. We know that the other is having the same causal relation with the glass, and so we have reason to believe that the other is also believing that there is a glass there, something like that. But now, while Davidson is speaking of beliefs, I think we could we could apply this concept of triangulation also to the content of our experiences, and where the content of our experiences is determined by the cause of the experience. That is the kind of feeling that we are having, the pain, basically. Notice that Davidson himself says that what causes our beliefs is what gives the beliefs its content. So basically, the content is fixed by the causal relation. One may wonder whether we are losing the subjectivity. That is, if I am not overreacting in a way. And I use, again, Davidson. Two features of the subjective, as classically conceived, remain in place. Thoughts are private in the obvious but important sense in which property can be private, that is, belong to one person. And knowledge of thoughts is asymmetrical in that the person who has a thought generally knows he has it in a way in which others cannot. But this is all there is to the subjective. And I think that let's consider this from as applied to pain. Obviously, the subjective that we need in the case of pain is saved, is preserved, because pains are obviously private in the sense that each one has its own, and there is some sort of asymmetry in the knowledge of pain. That is, which is called the privileged access to our own conscious state. And these two features are definitely saved. The intelligibility of words such as pain, annoyance, nuisance that you use in pain reports so founds the same structure of reference and predication for all the other terms, the terms that we use, for instance, in the case of a perceptual report. And it is by triangulation that we enjoy a stable shared context for understanding. So after all, as the ISP definition of pain says, we learn concepts through interactions. And usually this interaction occurs when the caregivers help us during our first experiences of bodily damages. Let me try to apply now these to some sort of triangulation exchange between two imaginary characters. These are John and Jill. Jill points toward John's wound and says, that must be painful. John points to his own wound and says, that is painful. Now, there is a sense in which Jill's sentence allows for existential exportation, while John's do not. Because, for instance, while Jill is observing, let's say, the wound of John, she may say, there is an X such that X is the wound and X is painful to John. Or she may also, we can also interpret that in this way. There is an X such as X. X is an experience of John, and the experience of John is painful to John. So in any case, Jill seems to be allowed to do the existential exportation. This doesn't seem to be the case with John. But if this is the case, then John and Jill are not really speaking of the same stuff when they are doing this kind of exchange, because actually there is a different logic behind them if we are to follow experientialism. So no matter how effective the interaction is, there is no real communication there. Let's have a different interpretation now of the two sentences, let's imagine different sentences. Jill, you feel pain in the toe. If she says that, then there is a toe, you feel pain in it. And so there is, again, existential exportation. While John would have to say, I feel pain in the toe and I experience a toe pain. Even if he infers, but there is no existential exportation. So again, it seems that the two cannot be speaking of the same stuff. Imagine now that John has a phantom limb. So definitely, Jill and John's sentences have different truth condition. So it seems again that by having a single treatment of the difficult case, experientialism is now forced to have a different treatment of the interpersonal case. Notice that something like that occurs also in the case of a single person. That is, imagine that I use a knife and I get close with the knife toward my finger. And when the knife touches my finger, call it this contact point. Now I can perceive the contact point, and I also can feel pain in it. It seems that since I can perceive the contact point, I can say there is a contact point, and I feel pain in that contact point because I'm seeing it. And also because I'm feeling it, I would have to say, I feel pain in the contact point. But the two contact points actually are different entities. So again, seems that we are not speaking of the same stuff. So if one abandons or does not consider properly triangulation and externalism for content fixation, we are forced to abandon a very plausible reading of how language roots the concept that we use in our experiential reports. Verhagen, in a paper on the second person, has this nice quote: meanings are not somehow fixed by people who then, in addition, need a concept of objectivity in order to have a language. Rather, people need a concept of objectivity in order to fix meanings to begin with. What is the way out? Is there a way out? Yes, that's what I wanted to argue. In particular, I want to argue that the objections raised to representationalism should be raised not to the theory, but rather to the representational system. And in this case, I would use the metaphor you're here. Basically, what I want to say is that the representational theory imagines a representational system. As such a representational system, as every representational system, may come with its own possible shortcomings and difficulties. So we should provide an error theory for representationalism. And the fact is, what is interesting is that the cases that make difficulties, that make problem for representationalism, that is phantom, chronic, and referred pain, are considered to be serious shortcomings for the theory, because it seems that the theory is forced to have subject continuously misplacing or misrepresenting the location of that originate pain. So in order to avoid this, experientialism basically moves all location in the experience of the subject. So what I want to see is it possible to move the difficult cases back into the body and away from the subject mind? It is Murat Aided himself that gave me a path to follow by using the concept of a map. Consider a map. This is a map of a mountain area and big pines, and I guess it's Colorado or something like that. All the points or the lines on whatever you have on the map represent points, and lines are not exactly, but areas on the mountain, on the actual mountain. So we know that not only they represent point, but then we also have some predication, because we have numbers, for instance. So you can see that next to so-called here, you have big pines in both character. There is the number 6862, which presumably is the height of big pines in foot. So it predicates that big pines is elevated above the sea of 6,800 foot. Good. So we have reference and predication in this map. How do we use maps? What happens with maps? Well, we use map to navigate. We navigate thanks to the map. We navigate to the world. I mean, there was a famous sentence by Novalis: we used to have theories died instead of us. And now so before walking through a trench, we look at the map, we say, oh no, better avoid this area. But this, all what we see on the map should meet the requirement of publicness that is typical of language. So even if prima facie the experience of John refers just to its own way of conceiving the body, we can say that the content of his experience in a way is a guide to his own body to find out where the body is wrong. But Derrida insists, and I quote, pain qualia are implemented by the proprietary predicates of the nociceptive system, but are not representational in that they don't function to attribute any quality to the body parts presented in the same experience. Pain qualia are the phenomenally determinate ways in which our body parts are presented to us or appear to us. The idea by Derrida has been can be considered as the idea of the adverbialist. The adverbialists basically take the as the adverb are modificator of the verb, sensation are modificator of the whole subject, but they do not say anything about the word. So again, the qualia are ways in which we feel ourselves to be, even if they are very specific. They tell us about the toe or something like that. But but what are these predicate of? To what or the point refer to? So the qualia, what do the qualia refer to? We see that per initial argument they cannot refer to part of the body. But they cannot refer also to the nociceptive system either, because if one accepts transitivity in causation, which it's a quite common kind of property of causation that one has to accept, if the qualia refers to the nociceptive system, the nociceptive system refers to the body, then the qualia refers to the body, and then runs again the initial argument. So what is left? Basically, qualia refers to themselves, which is fine. I mean, according to Derrida, because they are just the way in which, as Kripke used to say, appearance and reality coincide. When one in pain, there is nothing more than being in that condition. But I think that the metaphor of the map can be used in a representational way in a more interesting sense. Consider this kind of map. We all have this experience. There is a floor map of the museum or the library here, and a nice red dot saying you're here. Now the map represents the museum floor, and the dot represents you. And the position of the dot on the map represents your position in the museum. And the position of the map as a physical sign, as a piece of paper hung on the wall, determines the truth condition of the map itself, because it has to correspond nicely to the place and the map and your position. Now, so there are so-called 4 possible degrees of freedom here: the structure of the depicted floor, the condition of the dot, if it's visible or not, the position of the dot, and the position of the map as a sign hung on the wall. And as I said, this determines the truth condition for the map. There are cases of ambiguity, circular rooms, but we can skip them. Now there are 3 possible mistakes. The map does not adequately represent the floor of the museum. There has been some renovation and the museum has changed. The dot has been away. People still keeps touching the dot. And you have to infer your position from the worn away area, not from the dot. And the position of the dot on the map is mistaken with respect to the position of the map in the museum, so it has been misplaced the map. So the idea is that the map is analogous to the body map, and the dot is the represented source of the bodily pain, and the position dot of the map is the representation of the pain location of the body. And the position of the map as a physical sign determines the correctness of the content and the correctness of the action that the subject takes with respect to the represented location, where she goes in the case of the museum or where she touches in the case of the body pane. So what happens in the phantom pane? The representational system is mistaken about the way the body is. The structure of the body has changed, but the representation, so the representation of the position of the dot is physically misplaced. Basically, the representational system has not been updated with respect to the structure of the body. And there is empirical evidence that this is the case. The body map represents the body in its integrity, even if, for instance, the subject are born without a limb or without multiple limbs, or has undergone amputation early infancy. There is no update. So it seems that the body map is so-called is hardwired in us, and we continue to use the body map no matter what happens to the body. If you're familiar with this kind of problems, you know that the famous neurologist Ramachandran has devised a fantastic experiment to alleviate the phantom pain in this subject. And he has devised as an experiment in which he uses the limb which is present with a partial mirror, so to give to the subject just the mirror image of the limb they used to have, and they are relieved by this image. So basically, it's a representational treatment of a representational problem or representational pain. The chronic pain stems from a different kind of malfunction of the representational system, as the worn away dot. That is, the system retains a trace of the position of the original location, but in a format that is different from the original one. When you consider where you are by considering where the map is consumed, you are not looking at a red dot, you are looking at something different. And then you are inferring that there was the position where the dot's supposed to be. And again, it seems that it's a problem of the representational system, not of the representational theory. It's perfectly clear what is happening here once that we know what we are considering. And basically, it's a second order representation, this one, because the worn away dot, the worn away area represent where the dot was, which represent where you are in the position. So basically, the chronic pain represent where the original pain was in its location. Referrer pain, as a last case, I wish to notice before tackling the issue that it's strange that also experientialists use the concept of referred pain, because it seems that if a pain is referred because there is an apparent and a real location. Now, if we accept that there is a real or a bona fide location, but then this is actually a stronger thesis than the one that is endorsed by representationalists, because it's the perceptualist thesis. David Bain, we saw, was defending it, because the perceptualists argue that pain is identical with the physical location. The location of pain is identical with the physical location, while the representationalist says that the location of pain is where it is represented to be, so it's a different case. But in the term of our metaphor, what we have is that the body is correctly represented, but the point where the pain occurs is not. Here, possibly the problem is that either the dot is misplaced or the whole map has been hung erroneously. But it happens that dots are misplaced. Why there is still debate in the empirical sciences. Some says that because frequently these nerves are so closely tied that the signal may just be deviated from one side to the other, or there are many other possible explanations. So neurologists, at least as far as I can know, are still unclear on what happens in these cases. I mean, now, all these are in a way empirically open question. But what is important to notice is that we can have a way to salvage the representationalist, the representational theory without touching the theory, but simply saying, as any other representational system, it has a number of shortcomings, it has a number of possible problems. And so it's not necessary to throw away the theory and imagine a double semantics as the experientialist has to do. Instead, we can simply say the system comes with its own kind of limits. And so, it's time to sum up, I guess. So the interaction externalist second person that we saw that was originally in Davidson help us in saying that pain is not a special concept. It's not a concept that is completely different from glass or a pier. It's simply a concept that has a specific kind of accessibility condition for its truth condition, but it's not a special concept. We can treat it as like any other concept, and so the semantics is going to be the same. What we have to consider, what we have to recognize, is that the representational system has its own limits, but we know that we are full of limits, and so we should not be worried by that. And I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Thank you very much. I think I'm the chair. Okay, okay. Marco and Samara and Ernesto. Marco.
Well, I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for the talk. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I mean, the combination of Davidson's triangulation with all this debate on theory of pain, that's new to me. I don't know if you have taken it from someone or if it's your own idea, but that's a very interesting connection. Well, my question is just in the very beginning of your talk, you presented a few cases like the phantom pain, and I would call it like blurred locations when you can't really identify where the pain is because, you know, some damage in the spine and it causes pain some other place. I mean, all these cases, you presented them as a challenge, a problem to the representational theory of pain or to representationalism. And that strikes me as surprising because I mean, representationalism is not really committed to the to a relationist account of perception. Sometimes you use the term perceptualism. I think you meant something like the view that in order to have a perceptual state or a conscious or phenomenal state of a certain kind, you need the perceived object necessarily. It's very much like a causal connection that without the object, you cannot have the experience. But that's not what representationalism is all about, right? I mean, that's a kind of a representational content or some sort of intentional content. So of course you can misrepresent that. I mean, I think the whole representationalist comes with an error theory, and it was created to actually deal with you know, illusions, hallucinations, and all sorts of misrepresentations. So in the case of a pain misrepresentation, for instance, the phantom pain, that's a classic case. You misrepresent. You think there is a pain going on in a certain location. There is no such thing. The case, you go on and you talk about the existential exportation, which is I think, tricky thing for representationalists to deal with. And your use of the map analogy is interesting because then you classify different kinds of errors. And that's, I mean, interestingly, that's more or less what I did in my dissertation when I was working on hallucination. I didn't use the map image, even though I thought I used to, at least intuitively, think of representations as maps. I think they were more closely connected to what I was thinking than something like propositions or whatever. But it's still, so that's the way I used to, at least intuitively, I don't think I even said that in my dissertation, but that's the way I thought of the content of a perceptual state. But in the case of a pain state, this map, it can go wrong in many ways, as you said. And one of the ways is to some sort of they postulate that the rare entity wrongly. So it's pretty much you do the existential expectation, and then you have in the case a location, and you say there is a pain in it. The location does not exist, so there is a misreferring. And there are a lot of theories to deal with this sort of an empty de re reference. For instance, Sainsbury theory and many others like gappy theory, gappy contents, and I kind of devised one of these theories, and I think I could just kind of plug this theory in to deal with cases like phantom pain or misrepresentation of the location of a pain. Now, I'm saying all that just to say that, of course, I'm not trying to sell you my own theory on pain, but it's just because the very beginning, this doesn't seem to be a problem to representation. So I'm just asking myself how you motivate your move to all this discussion on maps and all that. If there is actually not even a problem to the first position you presented. I mean, I failed to see. So I just want to hear more why the representationalists, they should accept that as a problem. And at the end, maybe my question is for a clarification. How do you see the representationalist account of pain, if you buy it or if you think there is a problem? And which problem will that be, right? Thank you.
Simone.
You okay? No, because I think you blocked me my audio, my microphone. Yeah, thanks a lot, Marco Aurelio. Well, it seems that in the dialectics, at least for what I've seen, phantom is always used as a problem for the representationalist, because it seems that the theory itself says that if phenomenal concepts are representations, then they have to be representation of. So there has to be a content fix in the representation. For instance, take Michael Tai. He keeps saying that that the content of our representation basically is to be identified with the phenomenal character of the pain state or the qualia, basically. So since you're gonna have differences in content, for instance, let's go back again to pain, whether you feel pain here in the left or the right hand, then the difference, the quale is determined by the difference in the representational character, and this representational character is a representation of as of the right hand feeling bad or as of the left hand feeling bad. But as a matter of fact, I never read anyone saying that in the case of pain, then this has to do with failure in the representational system. That is, all the fixes that I've looked at typically are fixes that say about the theory. For instance, the representational character is not completely provided by the qualia, or there is some or the qualia are not as fine-grained as the representation, or something like that. So basically, these are, as I said, theoretical moves, because you are changing the whole theory basically. So once you have this, for instance, the fine-grainness, imagine all the debate that has been on the non-conceptual content. No? So the fine-grainness was the one that guiding how much people are able to be specific with respect to their qualia categorization, because you can be good or not good enough to differentiate between two qualias if you are not fine-grained as much as, if, for instance, your perceptual system is, or something like that. So it seems that, in a way, I agree with you that sounds somehow surprising. But at least in the literature, in the literature on pain, it seems to be accepted that phantom is a problem for representationalist theory. This still continues to be one of the issue. I don't know.
Maybe we have still 4 questions. So my suggestion is to pass to another question. Okay. Samara, please.
Grazie mille, Simone. Too much interesting about phenomenology of pain. And my question is, what do you think about this kind of representation? It's a kind of representation of emotions, you know? I'm thinking, and maybe this dot of pain indicates something about, correlate with functions of part of bodies. I don't know, I have an example of this in my life because what do you think about this kind of representation of emotions?
I mean, you want to you want me to be clear on whether a specific qualia comes also with some sort of emotional side, right? Something like that. If I'm getting you right, because one of the things discussed presently is whether why pain are bad for us. Many people now, there are some 2 or 3 papers on philosophy, phenomenological research, and the other, and people are discussing the so-called astrological theory of pain. That is why we value pain to be bad. And many say that, for instance, because it comes associated with a negative emotion or something like that. For instance, in discussing the case of the masochist, people wondering what happens in the case of the masochist, and the idea is that pain obviously is physiological, it's just the same, so it activates the very same stuff, but it seems that to be some sort of dissociation with the astrological aspect, that is the emotion, they have associated different emotion, they have learned to associate different emotions to that. It's an interesting stuff. I really do not know what to think now. I mean, but for instance, in the case of the masochist, what I can say is this: in the case of the masochist, what it seems to be the case, at least to me, is not the fact that there is a different emotion going on, but what is the case is that there is or there is not a control. The masochist feels pains just like me and you, for instance, if he is involved in a car accident, because he has no control on the source of pain. The masochist gets is involved in pain as a form of pleasure, as long as he can control the source of the pain. So it seems that the hedonic aspect, the astrological aspect, the emotive aspect is under the control, under the control aspect. As long as you can control, you can give yourself certain kind of emotion. Once you cannot control, the emotion runs the emotion runs the same way as everybody else. So that's the idea that I got. But I know that there is a discussion on this, and I can provide some reference in case. Olivier Massin.
Prego. The next one is Ernest.
Hi, very nice talk. My question concerns your use of triangulation. I wonder whether, can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, I miss you. My question.
My question, your use of Davidson's triangulation.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Because one might think that it is a case of dyadic interactions. So you have the interaction between, say, a child who the triangulation interactions starts much later than dyadic interactions, and it might seem that what we want to have is interactions that are contingent upon states of the world, but may not involve a third object. So why can't we go with dyadic interactions contingent upon states of the body? In this case, that might provide what you need as far as objectivity is concerned, because you'd have a contingency of interactions without having to postulate a third object. And I think that there might be some, I don't know, some arguments to it in the ontogeny when this child starts to talk about pain. If they start before they engage in triadic interactions, they might have what you need with dyadic interactions. That's it.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Thank you. The idea, my idea was this: when we fix concept, when we learn concept, even if this is obviously is contingent, the idea is that we are triangulating with our caregivers, but clearly there are cases in which, unfortunately, there are no caregivers to triangulate with. In this case, the other would be our own representational system. That is, what is happening to me. There is a sense in which pain imposes on you, as if it were, a message from the body. So, for instance, imagine the condition in which you try to not to think about the pain. It seems that you are engaging yourself with some sort of dialectic. No, I don't want to think about my toothache. I want to think about philosophy or whatever. So it seems that there is a body, there is a representational component telling you, oh, something is wrong with your foot or whatever, and it's you that trying to temper this kind of information. So it's so to say, a virtual triangulation. Is not the kind of Davidson had in mind, but it seems to me that is a triangulation nevertheless. And then there is a second aspect. I grant that obviously Davidson was thinking to belief when he started to think about triangulation. And we all know that he used to think that belief are something that you can have just if you have a language, and animals don't have a language, so they don't have beliefs, so there is nothing about that. But there was also the idea that there can be form of triangulation precognitive or pre-intentional. He used to say that as well. So I was obviously pointing to this kind of triangulation, the precognitive, pre-intentional form of triangulation. I don't know if I reply to your point, Ernesto.
I'm not sure, because I was not really thinking about the conceptual side of the problem, but with the fact that you might have interactions involving two people and not an object. So I was thinking about dyadic interactions instead of triadic interactions. One might think that what you need is interactions that are contingent upon the states of the world that you do not control, but that might not involve a third object. And I think it's not the case whether there is a caregiver or not, but the fact that we're talking about, for instance, it seems difficult to have what seems to be the non-cognitive basis of triangulations, which is joint attention. So two people jointly attend to an object. To a pain state, it seems more difficult to understand what that would be. Instead, if you think of it as a dyadic interaction, that it might be, it's not really a case of joint attention, but a case of reacting with someone else so as to know how the concepts will instruct you how to react to your own states.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree that there can be dyadic relations, but the point is, at least that's what I got Davidson saying. The point is that dyadic triangulation is possible because you had a triangulation determining how to fix the concepts. And so I was taking this kind of triangulation as relating me and you and, my wounded toe or something like that. Now, clearly, then we can move away from the physical condition and keep this dyadic kind of interaction. But we won't be allowed to have a dyadic interaction unless we have engaged in some sort of triangulation. That's the lesson that I took from Davidson. I don't know. So it is only after the triangulation has been set that the dyadic interaction has meaning, because we know how to reconstruct the meaning of our exchange in terms of a potential triangulation, which is a very interesting point. But I think that it can be subsumed under Davidson view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Felipe.
Yeah, hi, hello, Simone. Thank you very much for your talk. So some people have complained that when you characterize the phenomenal character of pain, they just say like there is a pain. It's much too coarse-grained because while different pains feel very different from one another, like a headache or a sharp object that pierced your body, they feel very different. But you can also say that this difference in different pains is not only due to the painfulness aspect, so to speak, but also in the way that the body is experienced and the location of the body is experienced. So for some pains, it seems like the location of the body is not so important. So it's like when you have a fever or a flu and you just like have this, your whole body aches. And it's not always due to an error in the representational system, just because for some pains, this is not so important, So I just wanted to know how what you think about these cases. If you still want to maintain it, there is this representational system, this map that represents the location, this just like roughly representing it, or just in these cases, we don't need a map at all.
Mm-hmm. No, that's an interesting point. Usually, these are not very much discussed because it seems that these are, we may call them condition. When I feel, when I got the fever, it seems that everything is broken or something like that, no? And it seems that to be a very general condition. But still, if you think about that, if I ask you to qualify the condition, for instance, you may say, no, I feel all my bones broken, or the head is very heavy, head is pushing, or the eyes. And then, so once you start qualifying the condition per se, it seems that we all need to point out something. And imagine cases in which you have to treat a person that says, I feel pain. Where? Everywhere. Well, what is this everywhere? Tell me something more. No. It seems very difficult to take care of somebody telling you, I feel pain everywhere, or nowhere, but I feel pain. Notice that there are very strange pathologies, so-called Cotard delusional. That is, so for instance, people that tells you, no, I feel myself as a zombie, or something like that. But it's very difficult to consider this, and I would be ready to sacrifice the depth of the theory if this is the problem, because I think that if we can fix the theory with the three problems mentioned, which motivate, for instance, the ASP definition of pain, I think a step forward has been done. these cases are so complicated, but I think they are so complicated for everyone that perhaps experientialism can treat them, but in a way they are so complicated for everyone that perhaps I can retreat a little bit. Thanks, Felipe.
Okay, Andrea?
There is Diana as well.
Yeah, but Andrea was the last. Okay.
The
Diana.
video is not functioning. Anyway.
Okay, here's Andrea.
Yeah, but you're hearing me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now. Yeah, I had the two questions. The first on triangulation too. Davidson's triangulation is a good model for ostensive teaching. And in the case of mental concepts, it is hard to see how it can functions quite well. I cannot teach to a child asking what it is to remember by saying something like, "Look, now I'm remember when you are born." Pain is as such a first person concept, and it is not so obvious how we can teach ostensibly what it is to be in pain, or what is a specific pain. And the other point, maybe I have to read Heidegger's paper, but I wonder if existential exploitation can be count as something against representationalism. There is another discussion about a failure of substitution. I call it the net blocks funny non sequitur. I feel a pain in the tip of my finger. My finger is in my mouth. Therefore, I feel a pain in my mouth. That failure of substitution has been treated by Michael Tai like an argument in favor of representationalism. It seems that feeling that create an intentional context, intentional with an S, which would be a good indication that we have a case of intentionality with a T. I'm not sure. I would like to understand better how the Heidegger's argument count against representationalism.
Thanks, Andre. Let me start by the second one.
Okay.
I know there has been all this debate on the functioning of the in word, or there is a hole in my trousers. My trousers are in the wardrobe. There is a hole in the wardrobe. There are plenty of there has been this big discussion between Michael Tyler and Paul Nurdorf on analysis a few years ago, and now there is a new rejoinder which has been published a couple of months ago, I think. I don't think it is specific for pain, as the example of the hole in the trousers I just gave you. It seems that somehow some people says that the preposition in works strangely in some cases, because, for instance, also I can say there is a stain on my scarf. The scarf is in the drawer. There is a stain in the drawer, in a way seems right, because yeah, actually, yeah, there is a stain in the drawer, but not in the sense that is on the drawer surface, but is in one of the things that are in the drawer. But nevertheless, it doesn't seem sufficient to characterize the intentionality with the T, the fact that there is an intentionality with the S, and you know all the debate by Chisholm and all the example that have been marshaled on this. So from this side, I think that when the IDEDA use the existential exportation, basically it wants to stress that you cannot imagine that there is an entity you have the pain of in order to accept the idea that someone is in pain, because there can be cases of pain where no entity, no physical entity is there. And that's it. I think that his purpose was not anything beyond that. I mean, that's how I took it. With respect to triangulation and how do we teach, I think that, I mean, I can obviously try to make up a story, but I think that what we want to say is that it is fair to expand Davidson's view on triangulation to something that was not originally in his mind, because clearly he was thinking to belief and even precognitive of pre-intentional belief, but he was thinking to belief. I don't know. I mean, it seems to be that again, when we interact, when we want to learn some abstract concept, in a way or another, we want to find out so to say, a stable point over which our own interaction then can converge or diverge. In the paper also, there is another example in this direction. In one of his papers, Davidson says that, for instance, in order to have a proper, full-blown belief, you have to have the concept of a surprise. Why so? Because the surprise tells you the difference between what you believe and the way the world is. Then, you know, you believe that there was a coin in your pocket, there is no one, and you are surprised. There is a sense in which surprises come also in the case of not pain, not necessarily pain, but the example is the tickle. Sometimes, you know, it happens to us that we feel a tickle and we look at our arm and there is nothing and we are surprised. So it seems that there is a way in which also from a proprioceptive point of view, we can be surprised by the signal that will arrive from our body when nothing is wrong with our body. And the chronic pain is a case at stake because we are surprised of being told by the doctor, nothing is wrong with your back. But, you know, doctor, I feel really bad here. Well, nothing is wrong, it's just a chronic pain. So it seems that, again, as Davidson used to say, we are measuring the difference between the belief we had and the way the world is. And so it seems again that all these kind of the examples conspire towards the extension that I wish to defend.
Thank you very much. I loved it. There has been applause here, but you know, you cannot hear it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the last two questions. Diana.
Well, thank you. Simone, I like the idea. I also try to work on the idea that Davidsonian triangulation can be extended to other concepts, especially to psychological concepts or mental concepts like pain or concepts which are, and that this is my suggestion. The strategy I work on is to try to understand that mental concepts are quite different between each other. So not all of them are as complex as the others. Of course, belief is one of the most complex, And pain, of course, is a simpler one, but maybe the concept pain in the way in which you are using it when you are a philosopher and discuss about the representational theory and experientialist theory, etc., that concept of pain is quite complex, much more complex maybe than the concept of belief, but there are another simpler concept, which is the one that in the ontogeny, on development, in the first 2 years of life or 3 years, when we are learning language, and maybe without any teacher, we just learn in the interaction how to use the words and how to understand what is happening to us and to others. So my suggestion is that I think I agree with you, you are right. We can extend the Davidsonian triangulation idea, but maybe we have to be careful. We try to develop that in the book with Tony in a couple of chapters, using the emotion concept like fear, the basic emotion concept. And also in another book that I wrote in 2013, but is in Spanish. I don't know if you read Spanish, maybe something. But the idea is that not all psychological concepts are as complex as the others. And maybe you should, if you want to talk about the origin of how we learn a concept like pain, maybe you should look first to the simpler one and the way in which what is meaningful and important in the interaction in order to learn that concept, and then what other things you have to add in order to possess finally a more complex concept that like the one you are using when you you do a philosophical argument about pain.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree. Consider that, for instance, it seems that was Christopher Hill himself. We recognize that there are technical and naive way of using what sounds to be the same concept. For instance, the classical example is the concept of force. We know that we use force as related to effort, fatigue, or something like that in a common sense. While when you have physics, then you use force as mass times acceleration, then you have a very specific definition. So it seems that there are two concepts partially overlapping because there can be differences. So this is and Chris had this talk saying, you know, there is a pain as common sense and pain as medical or neurological term or something like that, and then the philosophy piggybacking on that philological term. But this is interesting. But I should write down I will follow. I will look for your books.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Diana. And we have time for the last one question. Maria Eunice, please.
Thank you for your great talk. I love very much the map metaphor. And I wonder, just as a provocation for us to think about, if we could use it against the representationalist approach to pain, in the sense that pain would be an indicator of the misfunction of the direct process of attunement that's so dear to ecological psychology and philosophy, that this failed in this process of attunement would be directly perceived in a direct way amongst the body of the person. To give an example, my personal example, I go to the dentist, I have no anesthetic because I practiced for many, many years relaxation, and I produce a kind of attunement of my attention, and the difficulty here is to understand the process of attention. And also the same happens with tickles. No tickles. I can feel tickles if I don't put in practice my process of attunement. But if there is any plausibility in this idea of that pain is the misfunctioning of this attunement process, could we drop off all this qualia representationalist approach to perception? What do you think about that? Just to explain briefly what this attunement would be, is this process of responding to these relational dynamics of parts of a system, just in a simple physicalist way. Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, my first reaction would be, it seems to me that you are saying that if we consider attunement properly, we could avoid any qualia at all. Is that right? Okay, so my next question would be, how do we know that there has been a proper attunement? If it seems to me that you are basically saying that we know that the proper attunement has been reached because we don't feel the relevant qualia in the case. Is that right? But so in a way, qualia are, so to say, the litmus test, the litmus paper for the proper attunement. So it seems that the concept of qualia is needed in order to say that the attunement has been reached. I don't know if perhaps I'm not familiar with the
okay, we just say that properception requires qualia. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a way in which properception requires qualia. I mean, I'm not a qualia freak, as they used to say. That is, I'm even an identity theorist between the mind and the body. So I'm a super reductionist in a way. So I take qualia to be the way in which the body signals some happenings. And there is no anything left, basically. So it seems that the attunement would be, so to say, a detour way, an alternative path with respect to the usual or the more frequent path that is suffering. Instead of suffering, you follow this other route. You work yourself with this other route because you have to learn how to attune yourself in the, I guess if you go to the dentist without anesthetics, congratulations, because so it seems that you are working through a different kind of, but then I would say again, of qualia feedback, that is, that you know the attunement has been reached because the qualia has been changed. So you know that you are getting better and better, but you are feeling less and less pain. So it seems that the qualia are a measure of the attunement, if I'm getting right. I don't know, but
thank you. We can talk about
yeah,
that.
definitely. Okay.
I'm sorry, but we have just 2 minutes yet. So Simone, thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you.
Great talk. And I remember your Simone's complete paper is online, is available online for our special issue, and it's on the second person. And so thank you again.
Thank you, you all. Thanks a lot.